On the last Sunday of every month, Project Save the World holds an open global town hall for everybody who's interested as activists in the world. This one is already underway. It's January of 2023.
There's not too much going on with the foxes. This one pair of foxes that I'm monitoring right now, when was it? It was 2-3 nights ago. Nights, okay, they're night critters. Anyway, the female, who I call Big Eyes, attacked her mate, and they had a little spat. It was short. It was, and he walked away with a limp. And normally, when they get into a scrape like that, a real all-out fight, they go for the hind leg and the ears, because that's the way they can handicap their opponent to the point where their opponent can't defend themselves with an injured hind leg. The gray fox can no longer climb a tree to escape a coyote that wants it for dinner. And so that was a bit unusual, because those two gray foxes truly like each other. They have fun together. They chase each other and they wrestle and they do all kinds of things, just like their pups would. But they haven't had any pups, so they can still hold on to those youthful ideas and actions and so forth.
Well, what do you expect to come of this? Do you think they're going to get a divorce, or have they made up, or what's the story?
Oh, they've made up. Last night they were hunting together.
Oh, well, yeah. Does this happen very often?
No. I've only seen them get into a.
Well, what I mean, often in the world of gray foxes, do many couples have spats?
Well, I've only monitored 27 foxes, and these two are the only two that I've seen actually fight with one another in this particular way as mates. I've seen fights between gray foxes who are of a different family, a different group, but for mates, that's pretty rare.
Well, congratulations for I don't know whether you had anything to do with their patching it up, So I have to explain to everybody that I have COVID now. I'm in day 6 of COVID. And so there'll be moments like this when I have to cough, and I'll edit it out afterwards, but this, I don't know. There's no way I can avoid coughing. Anyway, so thanks, Bill, for this. And let's see, I think Peter Brogdon was here first. I know Peter's been sitting out in the waiting room for a long time. So, Peter, you get to bring us up to date on your affairs first.
Well, I'm reconnected here. At any rate, I've got a bit of time to change, but I still have questions. I don't know if they're particularly relevant on this case with Russian relatives, things like that. I also have got some questions. I don't know to expect answers on things about small modular reactors, which seem to be pushed at the moment. And I would like to know a little bit more about certain things about them. And that's about it. We've had a nice lot of snow this week, so I'll try my skis, whether I can actually use them.
Yeah. Well, why don't you bring us up to date about your Russian relatives? I think you may have mentioned it before, but you have to start over here now.
Okay, this was a marriage arranged in Cyprus through the internet. They married about 5, 6, must have been 6, 7 years ago. it's a nephew of mine, and a lady who speaks and writes very well in English. And she has an older daughter who must be about 20 now, and they now have it'll be a 6-year-old child at the end of March, but they have gone through a divorce action because of the strains really between the two countries. So it's still a question, will I get some traveling and get to meet them or not? That's my question for 2023.
Yeah. So she's in favor of Russia and he's not. Is that it?
Oh, she lives in Moscow, and I guess the Moscow environment is very different from what we experience here in Canada.
Yeah. That's so sad. Oh, dear. Well, as a matter of fact, we are now being joined by a very wonderful Russian dear friend, Alexei Prokorenko. And I expect we will often want to hear from him. Good morning or good afternoon, Alexei. How are you?
Good afternoon. Good evening, actually, here in Warsaw.
Yes, you're in Warsaw. I should tell people that you left, I guess, about October, right?
September 25.
This is very immediately, as soon as I gather Putin had announced that he was going to mobilize people, which is the word we usually call it draft, but they call the draft is something different there. Anyway, so 700,000 men at least left the country in a hurry to keep from being mobilized. And Alexei went to Istanbul and spent several months there and then moved to Warsaw. So how is everything in Warsaw? And please do share with everybody, if you don't mind just starting right in. I think everybody wants to hear about a Russian who's on the lam.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's really exciting to be a part of such a great discussion. I left Russia on September 25. I guess 4 days after the mobilization, partial mobilization, quote unquote, was announced. But actually, partial means in a situation of chaos. Which I think the Russian army and the Russian state is in right now. Partial means that anyone can go to the army, regardless of the aptitude, regardless of health issues. People have been drafted with severe myopia, with diabetes type 1. No one really cares. So you just get into the army, to the front, before you can really address the issue.
Okay.
So I decided that my struggle was over. I struggled against the war for 7 months, starting February. But then I decided that when they started to just grab people on the streets, random people, I decided that I have to leave and continue my struggle outside of the country. So I left for Istanbul. I managed to get a ticket for a reasonable price compared to what people paid, because I paid only $1.3 thousand for a ticket to Istanbul. People paid $10,000.
What's the usual price in peacetime?
The usual price would be no more than $400 or $500. So, but I was lucky. I was very lucky because people paid 3 or 4 times that amount.
Yeah.
People crossed the border on foot. They bought bicycles in the.
We saw a lot of photos in those days of people lined up. I mean, most people on the news, I think, saw lines of cars and people on bicycles and foot. Yeah.
So there are some borders that you cannot cross on foot. You cannot walk across the border. You have to have a transport. So even like a skateboard would go for that. People
Oh,
bought even that. So just to get out of the country, because the country became outright dangerous for its citizens like me
now
and for all the rest.
you've been
Yeah.
in Warsaw for what, 2 months or so?
I've been in Warsaw since November 22. I was allowed to spend 2 months in Istanbul without making visa runs, without getting additional documents. So I had to leave anyway. And I was lucky to get a humanitarian visa for Poland.
Hmm.
And now I've been here for over 2 months. And I'm loving the
Now,
country, really.
are there more? Would you say there are more other? Well, I call you draft refugees or something. Would you say there are more people in Poland or in Istanbul in your situation?
In Istanbul, there was quite a few. In Poland, there is few because not many people have visas for Europe. Not many people were able to reach Poland because Poland really does not allow doesn't allow the holders of tourist visas to enter the country. Like the Baltic states, like the Czech Republic, like some other countries of Europe, you cannot just even if you have a visa, you cannot enter as a tourist if you have a tourist visa. I was lucky to have been issued a humanitarian visa right in Istanbul. It was really a very fortunate event for me.
But so there are not many folks like you there.
In Warsaw, no.
Okay.
No.
Well, compare the way they treat you in the two places. Is it more comfortable to be? I know you speak Polish, so that helps. But apart from that, is it more congenial to be in in Warsaw or in Istanbul?
Well, let's set apart the fact that I have the language here because it for the purity of our small like experiment of our small research. Of course, apart from the language, it's a lot more comfortable here because first of all, it's a European country, something that I understand better than like the Oriental flavor.
Mostly thinking in terms of how do people treat you? Are they nicer to you than you found people being in Istanbul, or is it relevant?
They're nicer here, I think, in terms of I know where I stand here because in Turkey they were also nice, but I always had an impression that well, you never know. You never know how to behave in certain situations. It's always about bargaining, about changing different agreements. For example, quite recently, Turkey's. I mean, December. So after I left, Turkey all of a sudden stopped issuing residence permits for Russians. For no reason, just many people submitted their documents, and when they came for the residence permit, they were told, no, we're sorry, we don't know, we're not sure that you have enough grounds to stay in the country. You have enough we're not sure enough that you will be really living here for 1 year. So in Poland, of course, there is a problem because I only have a visa for 1 year. After that, I will have to invent something to really stay here. But I know that within this year, no one will really interfere, and no one really will try to expel me or whatever.
Well, let me ask you a more general question because it's really relevant to the thing that I've been. Yesterday, I sent you an email about this because it's on my mind. There's a man I listen to almost every day, a man named Konstantin Samoilov, I think is his name, who has a streaming show where he talks about what it's like to be what Russia is like. and he's been doing this several years. I didn't run into him until after the war started, but when he left Moscow the same as you did, just probably the same
Mhm.
day,
Mhm.
to go to Tashkent, and
Mhm.
he's moved his family there, and so on, and so he's doing fairly well there. But here's the situation: he in one of his nightly talks the other day got rather emotional because he
Mhm.
says that lots of the oligarchs or government officials, anybody who's connected with the government, and everybody who's connected with the government has to express openly their support for the government policy, the war. So they all
Mhm.
do.
They
And
have to.
they, whether they really mean it is another matter, but
Mhm.
they all do because they lose their jobs otherwise. So
Certainly.
all these government people and the oligarchs and people with money, if they say that they'd like a visa, they'd like to go to London, or they'd like to go to the US or any place in the world, they are welcomed with open arms, he says. Now, that
Mhm.
may be an exaggeration, but they do not have any problems getting entry. But
Mhm.
the people such as yourself and he and these at least 700,000 other men who left the country because they didn't want to go kill Ukrainians, they
Mhm.
can't get a visa. So although he's there in Tashkent, and if he wants to go anyplace else, he can't do it because almost every other country says if you want a visa to come into our country, you have to apply for it inside your own country. So go back to Russia and apply for a visa there. Of course, if they go back to Russia, they'll, in many cases, well, terrible things will happen to them. Either they'll
Mhm.
be uh, uh, well, jailed in some cases because they have been speaking out against the country. These are
Mhm.
people like yourself who oppose the war. And instead of welcoming people like that, like you and Constantine,
Mhm.
he says that most Western countries are excluding you and saying, we don't like Russians, so you can't come in.
Mhm.
But Russians with money or government official connections can come in. And that is what I find offensive. And he was quite angry, and rightly
Mhm.
so. Now, here's my theory.
Mhm.
My feeling is if we want to do anything as peacekeepers, peace builders, peacemakers, to overcome the problems that Russia is going through, it's going to be Russians that we have to support. I mean,
Mhm.
Russians are the only people who can fix Russia. And the
Yeah.
only people who have the right values to fix Russia, many of them have, like you, left the country. So we should be supporting and encouraging and loving people like yourself and Constantine and anybody else who left the country, and
Mhm.
supporting you guys and encouraging a discussion of what kind of country you want to, what kind of changes that you want to have made
Mhm.
in the politics of in the structure of your country. We should
Mhm.
be doing everything possible to enable this conversation to go on right now. Yeah, and so what I want to do, as you know, I know Lloyd Axworthy,
Mhm.
and I want to set up a conversation, a talk show with Lloyd Axworthy and you and Constantine and maybe one or so other people who have the same situation of being excluded from immigration to the Western countries
Mhm.
because just simply because of being Russian, and see and put this to him. Now I understand the reasoning. The reasoning has to be if you left the country, we don't know whether you left because you just plain don't want to get drafted or inducted in the army. And therefore, you
That's for
might actually
sure.
be in favor of the war and be supportive of Putin and so on. So maybe
Exactly.
we don't want to let you in because we don't have any good way of knowing which is which. But
Sure.
if that's the case, then they should keep these other guys out too, for sure, right?
Mm. It's not so easy. it's not so easy because most of the guys with the money have already taken like the effort, made the effort to secure a residence permit or even a citizenship in the Western countries. So there's no legal reason to keep them out because they have used their money, maybe corrupt money, to secure the legal right to live in the countries like France, like Spain, maybe Poland in some cases. I don't know. Great Britain, the UK. So
Well,
that's the
I don't
problem
know
with
what
it.
kind of a test you would need to apply. What we really want to know is which of these guys are just getting out of the country because they want to, they're draft evaders, not because of
Mhm.
ideology or commitments or ethics or anything like that, but just self-serving reasons. But that they really support the government's war. And if we
Mhm.
could, sort these two categories out, it would be a
Mhm.
lot easier. We should be telling the soldiers, listen, guys, if you want to defect,
Mhm.
I think they do tell them in the field, they say, if you want to surrender and defect, here's what you do. And they have
Mhm.
a phone number or something you can call, and then they
Mhm.
arrange to meet you someplace and pick you up. And that's, I think, I hope they're doing that on a big scale, because that's what we want. Is we want to capture, collect and make friends with and encourage
Mhm.
people who want to, get out of the army, so on.
Mhm.
Okay, I would like, to hear other people thinking about this. All of you, if you have an opinion about what we've been saying, I'd like to have a little conversation about what you think should be done about people like Alexei. And I know Alexei's values very well because we've been friends now for about a year, I gather, something like that, long enough for me to really know that he's serious about opposing the war. So what do the rest of you folks think about this issue? What should be done about it? Anybody?
I wish I could stay and contribute to this, but I have to go.
Okay, Bill, thank you for showing up, and give our
Okay,
good wishes to your foxes.
thank you.
Yeah, David Miller.
I was just going to say that this reminds me of a discussion of the Nansen passport that was invented in the 1920s and which has fallen out of use. I don't know who else is a specialist in this question, but I would be very interested in hearing from anybody on this call who has some knowledge about the passport. I think the person is probably Doug Rush, but he's on another call which is simultaneously going on, which I'm trying to cover as well, about the UN Parliamentary Assembly. So it's kind
Well,
of
I know that Lloyd Axworthy is, of course, a big authority because he's the head of the World Refugee and Migration Council, and he is going to be one of the directors of Project Save the World when we get it organized. And he mentioned in an interview I did with him a year or two ago, maybe 2 years ago, he mentioned the Nansen passport idea, which, as you say, is no longer being used. I don't know why it couldn't be picked up again, but the countries want it because a lot of people say, well, these guys who are leaving the country, they may be people who just they want some of them do. I think Alexei has met people in Istanbul or someplace who really favor the war, but they just don't want it to be their war. Yes, David,
I thought you wanted to hear from other people.
go ahead.
I have a question myself. My nephew has visited his daughter in Moscow with the now divorced wife, but he was not staying in exactly their house, but they'd been there. And how does he get easily from England into Moscow? Do you know the choices of routes?
Do you know, Alexei?
Well, I would either go via Istanbul. Well, technically, there is not a problem to go from Warsaw. There's a bus going from Warsaw to Minsk, and then you can take a train to Moscow from there via Belarus. So technically, it's not a problem.
So,
Okay,
okay,
thank you.
I just don't know how he did it. He hasn't told me at this stage. But
Or Istanbul or Belgrade. There are several hubs which still fly to Moscow.
okay, so it's not that difficult. It's just that,
No,
yeah, do I
at
find
least
a
Istanbul.
way myself to meet my new great grandniece or whatever? Is it just grandniece or?
I hope you can do it.
I just don't know whether I can do it.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Alexei, do you know of many cases like Peter's in which this family members have the marriage is breaking up because they are on different sides of this war issue? Does this happen a lot? Have you heard of cases?
Well, I know personally a few cases when people when men had to leave and abandon their families for at least for a while, go to a different country, and this Christmas, this New Year, even the opposition media invented some like they published some articles on how to celebrate Christmas and New Year when you're apart, what to invent to make it feel like a holiday online. So how you can arrange a Zoom call to feel like you're next to your people, because really this has been a year of broken families. Some of them are together spiritually. They have the same ideas about what's going on. It's even worse when they have the opposite views.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Because I have a
apparently
friend.
that's the case with Peter's relatives.
I have a friend. He's in Yerevan right now. He's my colleague, and we're friends. And he uses quite strong words about the situation. Like his mother is supportive of Putin's regime, and he says that my mother wants to make a beefsteak of me. That's what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And his mother is supportive of the war, so he's even afraid that if he comes back to Moscow, he might help him land in the army.
Right. Mm-hmm.
She might help him do that.
Anybody else on this issue? Because I think it's an important question, and I don't know what to tell. Where to go with that? How can we help these people? Anybody?
Well, if I can offer an opinion, can I be heard?
Please, Alan. Yes.
Yeah, hi, Meta. Nice to see you and all. This is, of course, all political. This is, of course, all political as to what the different regimes are, how they're trying to pose themselves in relation to the war. But I think if we are to do anything, considering we as those for peace, we should refer to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that everyone has a right of freedom of movement in their country, out of their country. It's a human right to be able to leave your country, and that you're blocked is a denial of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I think we should, to the extent as peace people, move this question at all, it should be to advance that people have the right to leave their country, not to be persecuted. And that's it. And if they're not accepted, it's because Poland or whoever does not want to recognize the Universal Declaration of Human Rights for whatever their political reasons are. And NATO probably has a lot of similar feeling. But the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is where we should be, Article 13, Article 14.
Well, that's certainly the case when it comes to leaving your country. But but I don't know that there's anything in the Declaration of Human Rights that says any country has to accept people from any other country. I don't think there is.
Well, I remember when at the time when the internet global citizenship, international citizenship was being promoted at the in Paris at the time when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the promoter, when it's out to be UN territory, the French said, "Well, where's your passport?" He shows them his international passport. They said, "That won't do." So they send him to Germany, and the Germans won't let him in, and so he camps on the border.
Gary Davis.
Yeah, yes. And I think that another thing to offer into this is that people's right, if they desire, in turn determining their own nationality, is to accept the nationality of international citizenship and to ask the lawyers that are around the World Service Bureau, to negotiate that this passport should be recognized to enter your country. Now, how long you can stay is another question, and how you negotiate whether you're allowed to stay or whether you then got to go to another country. And but the right to leave your country is a right of that everyone should have, particularly when things are as stinky as they are.
Thank you. Okay, maybe I don't know whether people want to speak to this issue. If not, we'll open it up to anybody who has something on your mind that you would like to talk about. First, is there anybody who wants to speak to this issue? Because I think it's, to me, it's very crucial. No, I don't see any hands or anything. Okay, how about, Alexi, your hand is up. Are you, you want to speak further?
Yeah, I'd like to say a few words about really this matter. If I'm the last one to talk, so I have a couple of things to say. First of all, I have a question here from Mr. Sheldon. What do I do? Am I able to work? Legally, yes, I am able to work with this visa. It's another question of what kind of work I'm going to find here, because I've spent almost my entire career as a conference interpreter, English, German, Russian. And here I'm trying to find a similar job. And in the meantime, I'm honing my IT skills because it's very important. It's very there's very high demand for this profession here, and I've always been interested in that. And I'm trying to kind of look into that direction very seriously. Be it a software tester or even a software developer. And for the past month, I've mostly been busy learning stuff in that direction. But technically, I can work. This visa allows me to do so, to work legally here. And I hope no superstitions will prevent people from hiring me here. Secondly, about the passport, there were discussions last year, I think, about last summer, about a so-called passport of a good Russian. The political emigres, renowned political emigres from Russia, like Garry Kasparov, the former chess world champion in chess, and other people of similar renown. They offered an idea that people that there be a passport of a good or decent Russian, but then there so the one that's proven not to be supportive of the war. But then there came a lot of questions as to who would really issue those passports, who would evaluate whether someone is a good Russian or a bad Russian, a decent or a vile Russian. And all this bogged down in discussions, and the idea didn't go anywhere except ridicule and lots of jokes. And up until now, people people are critical of it, and there's lots of jokes about good Russians. It's a matter of like a laughing stock for people. The
Well,
third,
I think it's
yeah.
obviously a serious issue. It really is what we want, but anybody can see that it would legally it would be a big mess. Yeah, you couldn't
Who
really.
would authorize? Yeah, who would choose? Who would tell a good Russian from a bad Russian?
Yeah.
Who would be the authority to issue those passports? Let alone like corruption, bribery. Okay, who's to decide? Who's proven to be qualified to discern between good Russians and bad Russians?
Well, that's a problem. I don't know that there's a solution. I don't know. They need a lawyer, but I never heard of anybody who could even try at that.
Because before I came to Warsaw, there was a session of an emigre parliament of Russia here in Warsaw in the beginning of November, and even that, like people opposition leaders, former members of the parliament in democratic times, even their legitimacy caused lots of concerns among the opposition itself. Who are they? Who they represent? Who they were elected by? So there was a lot of discussion on that point. And yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and we maybe other people will have other questions for you in a bit, but let's go on and give a chance. We have a number of people that I don't know personally. Elizabeth Vanderplug, you came in early and you've been sitting patiently. I haven't greeted you yet. Hello, how are you and who are you? Tell us about yourself.
I'm just me. I'm nobody important. I'm just a nice retired lady. But I'm wondering whether we really do enough to actually work on having a negotiated peace for that war before it gets any worse. I keep correspondence from Europe. And, one of the comments that came, if you bait the bear enough, sooner or later he will respond. This war has been going on since 2014. The Americans have spent billions in Ukraine. We had a government that was very keen on sending or selling liquefied gas to Europe. And as we notice now with this, that the rest of the world isn't so enthusiastic about that war. The gas prices have come down because everybody is buying the Russian gas still. And what is really the reason behind it? Well, you can't put missiles around somebody's country and don't expect them to react. I mean, remember the Cuban crisis? And we sort of say, oh, naughty, naughty Russia. I don't believe in any war. I spent my childhood being warmed by nice Canadians. And war never gets us anywhere. I think we should work much harder to go and find a peaceful solution to that war rather than supplying them with more and more stuff. There's just a lot of people making a lot of money on it.
Thank you. All right. That is definitely an invitation for further comment from a general discussion about this issue. And we haven't had one for a while. It's been, for one thing, it's been a couple of months since we really had a conversation at all. But who has thoughts about that issue now, besides Elizabeth?
Great silence.
Hello.
Yes, Andre.
Hello, everyone. Namaste.
Hello.
And more importantly, if I pronounce it right, Mir. Peace. To address the issue, I think that we need a people movement. The people around the world want peace. They want negotiations. And so I'm proposing that there's a new global peace movement can begin because of what Secretary General Guterres did in 2020. He stated that he wanted to call for a global ceasefire because we needed money for the COVID vaccinations around the world. But what he really was saying was that stopping war affects all issues. And so the people want peace. Now is the time for something to come along and unite the people. And I believe that the answer is nonviolence. Gandhi and King lived and died to teach us that the nonviolence is the answer. It's about anti-war and stopping war, but it's also much more because it creates goodwill. And that goodwill creates trust and respect. That's what we need. So my proposal is that all the countries involved in the war can save face and have an exit strategy by promoting saving lives. Because that's what the people want. They don't want people dying because of war. And so that's pretty vague, but in its own right, but it translates into specific actions that can be taken. And that's what I've been working on. And I've been fortunate to be now working with the International Peace Bureau, the Charter for Compassion, the Women Wage Peace in Jerusalem, who's a group that's been Arab and Jew, opposites, coming together. And that's what nonviolence can do. It brings people with opposite opinions together. There's the strength and power. And another power that just was evident in the United States in the last few days was the killing of a man by police officers. And all the people on the news broadcasts are saying to everyone, how can we change our culture of violence? Well, the answer is nonviolence. I get excited about it because there's so many different avenues and so many groups, peace organizations trying to come together. And the formula is right in front of them. But Gandhi said about nonviolence, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. So it's time to win. And so anyone that wants to know more about what I'm doing, I'm going to put my email in the chat. I'm looking for people to assist with specific elements because those groups that I mentioned I'm meeting with the executive director of the International Peace Bureau on Tuesday, and we're all preparing a letter to send to the Secretary General to ask him to grant me an audience to present my plan. I've already presented the plan to his staff, but now I'm ready to go back. So I need help in some specific things. So please think about it if you want to join in many different areas, but to help me particularly right now, please let me know. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Elizabeth, your hand is up. Do you want to speak again?
Yeah, I think we're so very hypocritical. I mean, nobody cares about the war in Yemen. We are selling them vehicles to the Saudis, and the war in Yemen nobody pays any attention to it. And I just found out by reading an article that we actually have a base in Niger, in Africa. We're completely involved in the war on terror. We're never going to solve the war on terror unless we solve the problems that causes the war on terror.
Excuse me, Elizabeth, are you in Canada? Are you referring to Canada?
Yes.
I'm not sure where you live.
I'm in Canada.
Okay.
In Canada. And, as long as we just, the war is fine. Some wars we like, other wars we don't. We never supposed to have joined the war in Iraq. We have about 800 soldiers right now in Iraq. And war is very, very profitable for everybody. Right now, we're very concentrated on Ukraine, but the rest of the world, there are wars everywhere, and we are contributing right, left, and center. And, even the war on terror is just whack-a-mole. You kill one terrorist and a new one comes up unless you solve the problem. I think we have to go a lot deeper. What causes wars and who is making money? And as long as you can make a lot of money, we will have wars.
Thank you. Okay, Richard Denton. Hello, Richard.
Yep. Okay. Hi. I'm
Hi.
again, it's you're sort of preaching to the converted because I agree with Elizabeth and Alan and Andre and Alexei, everything that you've said. I think don't really have anything further to add to Alexei other than, yes, I agree that, quote, good Russians should be allowed to come to the West. I think that, and I certainly agree with the pacifism of Andre, but I think what we also need is people are in their own little silos, and we all need to come together. I think that ICANN has done that with over 160 organizations, but I think that needs to be expanded. I think also youth is our answer. The youth, Fridays for the Future, Greta Thunberg, and others, they're working on the fossil fuel prohibition treaty. And I think that us old gray-haired people, we've done the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which is now international law in 68 countries, signed by 92 countries. But we don't have that broad appeal out to the public, whereas the youth have that broad appeal out to the public, but the fossil fuel prohibition treaty is yet to go through the process. So one is a top-down, the Treaty on the Prohibition. One is a grassroots up, the fossil fuel. But I think that these two need to come together. And unfortunately, at the moment, the youth do not see the trillions of dollars that goes to the military, and that they are one of the greatest users of fossil fuels and the greatest producers of greenhouse gases as a segment of society.
Now listen, Richard, you mentioned this fossil fuel abolition or whatever treaty, and I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it. I bet very few people here do. Can you explain what it is and what the terms are that they're asking for? And you say it's young people who are running it. I'd like to know more if somebody can explain it.
Okay, yes, basically it is young people that are running it. It has three tenets or principles. One is that we don't do any further exploration for new fossil fuels. Two, we use up the reserves that we already have. And three, we convert to renewable energy sources, wind, solar, tidal, biogas, etc. So those are the three tenets. It's basically based on the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, but it's slowly gaining momentum through the process, but again, has to get up to the higher levels. When we look at getting up to the higher
who's
level,
in charge of running it? I mean, maybe we should get an article about it in Peace Magazine or something, because I really don't know enough, and I think probably we all need to know more. How could I get in touch with the people who are doing it?
I can send you the references. That's not a problem.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Anybody else know about this fossil fuel cutoff? What's it called?
Fossil Fuel Prohibition Treaty.
Prohibition Treaty. And would they, I mean, how quickly would they actually try to rule out any use of fossil fuels? Is that part of it?
Correct. And again, I think where we're putting the effort is at the municipal level. The federal level, as you know, tends to be more right wing, polarized, and so we're not getting very much traction at the federal level, whatever country you want to talk about. But at the municipal level, we are getting a lot of people on side, and so that's where not only the Treaty on the Prohibition is going with the ICANN Cities Appeal, with the Back from the Brink down in the States push, but also the fossil fuel is looking at getting more and more cities to endorse it. And the idea is that once they get enough cities, that will, quote, then push their respective federal governments to act. Survey after survey have shown that 70 to 80% of people want to get rid of nuclear weapons, but unfortunately, their respective governments do not.
Well, yes, but fossil fuels are not exactly in the same category, because I mean, all of us, lots and lots of people would love to quickly. The name of the game is to get off fossil fuels as soon as we can, but you can't overnight. That's the damn thing. Nuclear weapons, if we abolished them tomorrow, there'd be no problem. We'd all be fine. But if you said you can't use any fossil fuels from now on, I don't know how we'd get through the day right now.
Well, it is a gradual process, Meta. I think, individually, I do the reuse, reduce, recycle. I have an electric car. So, individually we can all do that. And I think, again, it's to work on the municipal governments to, from a grassroots up approach to the federal governments of whatever country you belong to. So, yes, it's not going to happen overnight, but I think that by getting the grassroots, for getting cities to endorse the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and also the fossil fuel prohibition treaty, this will then show the federal government that there is widespread support and that they better get along with it, or they may get voted out of office.
Thank you. Okay, back to Elizabeth.
Well, war is very polluting. We just said Canada just said they would buy some F-35 planes. They're extremely polluting. First of all, they're probably never going to work. Mm-hmm. But that would be one thing we could give up, and we bought them just in case we get into a war with China or Russia. I guarantee you, if we get into a war with China or Russia, very few of us will survive it.
Correct.
Okay.
It's that we've got a sort of a movement called mutually assured survival, as opposed to MAD, mutually assured destruction. And I think that we need to also look at all of these global problems that the military can't solve, and they all cross national boundaries. I'm all in favor of patriotism, but certainly not nationalism, which says my country is better than any other country. I find it's interesting. I just traveled down the Dalmatian coast, as I think I was telling you, Meta, and you look at national anthems. In Slovenia, the national anthem is about brotherly love and internationalism. The national anthem of Croatia and Montenegro is about how great their country is. Mm. But when you look at national anthems of France, Ukraine, Russia, the US, they're all very militaristic. And people are indoctrinated into that every day, that they, quote, take the sing it at school, etc. And I think that is something that certainly needs to be changed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, Alan Haber. Alan?
Yes. Well, just that last comment drew my hand right up, because I think the entire framework that we have to emphasize and re-emphasize, this is about ending the whole war system. There's a system of domination, imposition, hierarchy, patriarchy, and it works through all our institutions, but it leads us into a view of the U.S. and the U.S. and its allies dominating the world, and it leads us to destruction. And it is how do we get out of that system toward not full spectrum domination, which is the Pentagon slogan, honest as they are, but full spectrum cooperation, caring, sharing, helping, and particularly healing from the last 5,000 years of pathological insanity when rulers are able to murder at their will. So out of the war system to cooperation, caring, sharing, helping, and healing.
Thank you. All right. Yes, Richard.
I just have one quick statement.
Oh,
Hi.
I thought it was Richard.
Yes, Richard, bringing up the climate movement and the climate crisis. When I make my presentation to the Secretary General, I intend to mention that the first part of the plan is to unite the peace movement and the climate movements together so that we can then invite all the rest. If those two first come together, then it starts a chain reaction. So, and then we implement what I call an emergency action plan. So it's not just about pacifism. It's about action. And Meta, I hope you're feeling better too. You said that you had COVID. Some of the people that just came on late, she said she's been has a cold, but it's part of COVID.
It's COVID.
Yeah,
I can't say I'm enjoying it, but I consider myself quite lucky because I've had 4 shots before, and so I think it's much weaker than it would be otherwise. So yeah, if I inhale, I have a little inhaler here with steam, which does more good than anything else. So if you find me sniffing at steam, that's what I'm doing. Richard, and then Alan Haber again.
Okay, yeah, just to again follow up on Andre, not only do we need to bring the two youth and the environment with the older anti-war peace groups together, I think we need a change of the whole system. And the latest that I'm interested in is also donut economics. And Kate Rathwoff, I think, has an excellent idea. She did a debate with 2 people, one who professor argued for green growth, which means that we continue to do the exponential growth, but we do it, quote, green. So we have the electric cars. We try to do CO2 sequestration. We try to seed the clouds in the Arctic Ocean to reflect the sunlight. And you've had numerous speakers, Meta, that you've had talking about all this. Then you have the other side, which says that no, you need to change the whole system and not have growth at all, that it becomes sustainable. And so you go to alternatives of not producing the CO2 in the first place. And I think that I certainly favor the latter, although I'm a realist and say that you probably need to do both to get to that 1.5 degrees. I think also that it's interesting that Meta, you're probably infected with COVID-19 BXX 1.5. We're talking about 1.5 degrees to limit our global warming. And this past week, the doomsday clock is set at 1.5 minutes to midnight. So now this is the year of 1.5. Thank you.
Good and bad. Okay. Thank you, Richard. And Alan again.
Yeah, well, the comment that the need to make a union, a connection between the peace movement and the environmental movement resonates with me. I work on Earth Day and Peace Day, both in our struggle for the commons in Ann Arbor. But I thought I would share with you an item of knowledge that I did not know about until I discovered on a recent trip to Berkeley, California, that the reason Earth Day is on April 22, does anybody know?
No.
That's when it was set up in 1970. But actually, it derived from an effort to unify the peace movement and the environmental movement at San Francisco State in 1968.
Really?
They viewed it as a red-green alliance, and they chose April 22 as the date for it because they thought that would help the alliance quality of this peace environmental connection. Because did you know that is the birthday of Lenin?
Oh, no, I didn't know that. Was
I
that
think,
supposed to be a positive incentive or?
well,
I'm
it
not
was,
sure.
in the politics of the time, it was a very positive incentive
Uh-huh. Okay.
that we see a one world. But
Well,
anyhow, that was very surprising to me. That was SDS people back in the day and other radicals at San Francisco State. And that connection between peace and environment continued into the next year and into the scene. We really need an Earth Day that then became a national and a global endeavor all over the world. And
well, I wish now we may have somebody here with some better ideas about it than I have, but I find we talk a lot about uniting the climate change issue with the war and peace issue. I don't know how to do it. We need some clearer, better steps to take and logic tying the two together. I don't see that much obvious connectivity between the two issues. Can somebody speak to that?
every one of those war jobs has to be converted to right livelihood. The Green New Deal directly addresses that, the conversion of the war economy to a peace economy that serves the needs of people. Many more jobs that way, but people who are now working the war economy have to see that there's a positive economic and a moral future if they get out of making nuclear plutonium pits and start harvesting almonds, whatever it might be.
Okay.
When I started in Ann Arbor, we had a group at the time of the peace dividend looking at all the government contracts in Michigan relating to the military and how could those contracts be converted. And it's a very interesting process to find the rocket makers trying to do something else, but the momentum of the peace dividend kind of disappeared. But we
That's
still
right.
need that sense of, what does the new economy look like? Because there are many people who see themselves, their dependence in the old economy, and they don't put a moral judgment on it. They put a maintaining life and family judgment on it.
Okay.
And
I should tell people who you are in terms of your history. You were the main honcho in the Students for Democratic Society back in the day, SDS, right?
back in the day. Well, now we're seniors for Democratic Society, but SDS ongoing.
That's it. Anyway, you really have a lifelong credential right there, being such an activist at an early age. Alexi, you had your hand up for a moment and then took it down. I want to give you the floor again if you want it. Tell us what was on your mind briefly.
I just would like to give Elizabeth the right to talk first.
Okay,
if I may.
Elizabeth.
And then I'll continue.
Yes, Elizabeth. I guess you're muted. I don't know. Are you?
I have an idea for retooling. Let them do fast-moving trains. That would be sort of similar to what they're doing And that would be a big, big improvement for everybody. It would keep them busy, because that's one of the reasons why we have wars, because particularly in the States, every senator wants to have more machinery in their state, because it makes jobs, and that would be a good thing. And I think at one point they were doing some stuff for in the ocean, where they were making electricity from wave power. And they were able to do that too. That was similar, and go and do that, because as long as it is profitable, we will have wars. And don't forget, the last war, you know who won it? The Swiss.
Okay. Actually, there's an interesting connection. Canada has been making these armored personnel carriers and selling them to Saudi Arabia, I think.
Yeah,
Yes. And I looked at a couple of years ago, I looked into what that company had been doing before they started making these. They're not tanks, but they're sort of like tanks. And it was that they had been manufacturing trains. So I thought, well, why not go back to making trains instead of making armored personnel carriers? I haven't got any much progress on that, but if anybody wants to start a campaign to reconvert the company that makes armored personnel carriers in Canada back to making fast trains, I'm all for it. Yeah, good. And Alexi, do you want to speak now, or do you want to go back to Richard, who's got his hand up? Yeah.
We can go back to Richard, but I have 2 points to make, two brief points.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I was inspired by the idea of building more trains, and what really struck me always and keeps striking me in Europe is that there are no long-distance trains really here, crossing the whole continent. So you cannot take a train from Finland to Spain, or from Sweden to Italy, or from the UK to Greece.
Yes, you can.
Like, you can
Maybe
take a
not
single
fast
train.
ones. I took a train from Helsinki to London.
It was a single train.
Single? Well,
You didn't have to
we had to get on
make transfers.
they put us on the hovercraft to go across the channel, but otherwise it was a single train. Yeah, that was I don't know, back maybe in the 80s, but surely you could then. I don't know what's wrong. Why have they changed it?
Now I don't know why. Maybe the airplanes have become so popular that no one really is choosing the trains, due to maybe, of course, due to the reasons of speed. But if we look at this, I just looked into the possibility of traveling, for example, Warsaw to Paris, Warsaw to Madrid. Not that I would like to do it now, but when I get settled here, I just would prefer to ride a train than to fly, because you have all the necessary connections. You can work remotely on a train. You don't lose that time.
I think I've actually taken a train from Warsaw to Paris. I used to travel a lot on trains in Europe, so either they've changed the rules or something. But I think you can do it.
There used to be a train from Moscow to Paris. Maybe you took that one, but now, of course, it's not around anymore.
Warsaw.
Because then I'll have to check it once again. Maybe they still have that.
And I took a train not even that long ago from Paris to Kyiv, and then a different train from Kyiv to Moscow. But I don't think I could do it today. Okay.
No,
anyway,
no problem,
I'm interrupting your
train
idea. Of thought. Sorry about that. Excuse me.
Sure.
More? Go ahead if you're through.
No, just I think the connection between the environment and the war is pretty obvious, because now when we have a war in Europe, no one really thinks about environment. People have more serious issues. People are busy. People are bogged down in a rivalry who makes more tanks, and the tanks who gives more diesel for those tanks. So no one really thinks about the environment, about nature. Large forests get burnt due to bombings. Large swaths of land get devastated. So it's all about like a very barbaric rivalry between nations, and the environment can only be protected together when countries get together, not when there is a zero-sum game between the countries, not when people are only busy inventing better or more cruel weapons which destroy not only people but which also destroy animals, which also destroy forests and habitat and nature. So the connection is pretty obvious to me.
Okay.
Maybe I'm
All
missing the
right.
point. Maybe I'm being a bit naive. Sorry.
No, all of those are real. It's just I'm not sure how much how they fit the priorities of the people in the various movements. But you know, if we can do it clearly, that is what we want to do. It's just that I've not seen it done too well yet. Richard Denton, do you have thoughts again?
Again, on a slightly different issue, but again, continuing on, another issue is divestment. You talked about conversion from armored vehicles into trains, but also I think that we need to divert money from the military to peaceful purposes. An example of that is, again, General Electric found that they were making components to nuclear weapons, but it was a very small part of their business. And so with pressure from ICANN and the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, they have now gotten out of that. And again, what we're seeing, again, coming back to Andre, that divestment out of fossil fuels and out of the military is having an effect. ICANN's program Don't Bank on the Bomb is removing about 70 billion per year. Unfortunately, over 600 billion is still invested in making nuclear weapons, but we're slowly whittling that down and making it more difficult for the Boeing and Lockheed Martins and Northrop Grummons, etc., to be financed from the banks. And I think that other organizations, World Beyond War, also has a divestment policy and promoting that. So all of these, I think, are going to have an effect. And hopefully, again, we can get rid of nuclear weapons through divestment. Thank you.
Good angle. All right. Charles Tauber, I haven't greeted you today. How's everything in Vukovar?
Actually, not so great. The city council a couple of weeks ago said that we're not going to have two alphabets anymore, Cyrillic and Latin. So they're making ethnic problems. And
is it going to be, which wins, Cyrillic or?
Well, Latin, obviously, because this is Croatian.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and the object is that this is going to disturb the ethnic balance here. Probably it will also disturb the ethnic balance within the police, within education, and within healthcare. So I'm expecting difficulties, perhaps violence within the next few months. I don't know, but I would suspect so.
I didn't know that the script was still a fighting matter. I haven't heard it fighting about that in a while.
A couple of people got killed a couple of years ago on script. Yeah.
Alexei, you're shaking your head. You disagree or what? Or
I'm
you
sorry,
do
I'm just
more?
shocked. It makes me shocked.
Uh,
It makes me shocked, just deeply shocked.
uh,
It's,
Right.
sorry.
And the situation in Bosnia also is not great. There's still quite a bit of tension between all three communities. That is Serb, Croat, Bosniak, that will say, Muslim. On a couple of points with regard to peace, and you know that this has been my standpoint for a while, that unless something is done about the situation with traumatization in all of these countries, that this is going to be transmitted from generation to generation and war is going to continue. And I think that that's the case with Ukraine. I think that that's the case with a lot of places. It's certainly been the case. That was, at least one of the causes, and it's not really acknowledged that way, but it was one of the causes of the wars here in the 90s. And nobody's really looking at it. The other thing we haven't talked about tonight, or at least as long as I've been here tonight, is the whole situation in Africa. We're working in Congo and Liberia now, among other places. And the situation in Congo is absolutely awful. And nobody's talking about it, really. And also, particularly in Eastern Congo, with M23 and all the various tribes and all the stuff that's going on there. And we're getting huge numbers of requests for more groups. So we're kind of going crazy, to put it mildly.
okay.
After our meeting tonight, by the way, I will have a meeting with a couple of people in Haiti, and that's another
Oh,
place where the tension is extremely high. Nobody's talking about these things. Nobody's really doing anything on the trauma issue. We seem to be like, to take an image from 20 years ago around here, or 25, we're wolves howling at the moon. That's the way we feel. And it's pretty awful.
there is
So-
some talk here about Haiti, though, but not about your issue, that is therapy for victims. But, you know,
In terms of
there was a request for Canada to do more, to send troops or something into Haiti, and I think that Trudeau is going to say no, that they've done it before and it doesn't work. In fact, we had an article in the current issue of Peace Magazine by Tim Donay, who had been in charge of peacekeeping mission in Haiti a long time ago, and he said that it really has to work through solving the elites in Haiti, that the Haitian elites need to actually take measures of their own, because it's, they can't just expect other people to come and solve their problems.
It's not only the elites, it has to get down to the grassroots level. And that's our feeling on it. All of these places have to get down to the grassroots level.
Mm-hmm.
The elites will fight with one another for as long as they can in any of these countries, in any of these regions. Certainly that's happening in Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, those kinds of places.
Well, how if you were in charge of solving the Haitian thing, but at the grassroots level, what would you do? Apart from doing group therapy, how would you organize reconciliation?
Okay, look, I'm not an expert on Haiti. I don't pretend I am. We've had a couple of meetings of that group, but I would organize, and this goes for Congo and this goes for a lot of places, I would organize community groups I would empower those community groups through teaching people how to, first of all, deal with the traumas, but also how to organize themselves into nonviolent conflict groups and to organize themselves into action groups to improve their own environments. That's not being done anywhere. The
Okay.
education levels are very bad in many of these places. That's needed. There are huge amounts of abuse of all kinds of people, women, children, in Congo and Rwanda and those kinds of places. And by the way, we're working also in Liberia with a lot of drug addicts, and that's a question of transmission from the civil wars of the 90s. And I'm hearing that that's the case in Sierra Leone as well. And these people are on drugs. The kids, people in Congo are afraid of the kids because when they get out of the army, they have been taught to kill people. And so I've heard this a couple of times that they're afraid to deal with these kids because they don't know what will happen to them.
Well, thank you. You know, we've got two more hands up, and the same people are talking all the time. Marilyn, you say you have to leave. Don't you need to say something before? You haven't even said hello. So at least say hello, Marilyn. What's on your mind before you go? Yoo-hoo. Marilyn? Well, I don't know. Maybe she's gone already. Okay, I also want to call on sorry, where are you? Somebody, Schmidt, where'd she go? Just a minute ago, I was seeing a woman named Schmidt who'd been here the whole time and hadn't even been greeted. And I think I discouraged her and she's gone away. I'm sorry. Marilyn, do you want to say hi before you go? All right, too late. Okay, let's put up the two hands. Yes, Elizabeth.
It's me again.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it is in France where you can't do any short flights. You have to take the train. It might be a different country, but I think it's France. But you know, the world should be run by kindergarten teachers. Kindergarten teachers take the toys away when the kids fight with them. And as long as we supply ammunition, etc., there will be war. And my understanding is that Ukraine was actually very heavily involved in the illicit weapon trade. And does anybody know what happened to that plane that crashed about a couple of months ago in Greece, which was full of weapons? It was an Ukrainian plane full of weapons, and we never heard anything else about it. Does anybody know what actually happened to it?
I don't remember hearing about it. Anybody else?
We never hear the interesting things.
Yeah, that's a problem. We don't have good press coverage. Okay, I wish I could call on somebody who hasn't spoken yet, and Marilyn's picture seems to indicate she's still with us, but that's probably not true. And Charles, you've spoken a little bit. Well, Adam, why don't you let us know what's going on with you?
Nana, I'm sorry, I don't have much to add. I'm listening to the conversation, but I'm also sick with COVID right now.
Yeah. Adam and I, we don't know who gave it to whom, but he works for me, and I got it before he did, so it must have been that I gave it to him, but I have no idea how I got it. Anyway, let's see.
I was interested to hear the comments about Canada not sending a force to Haiti, because when we've sent it in the past, it's not worked. And I'm curious if we've had that approach with other countries as well, where there's been repeated conflicts, and at what point does the government draw the line? In the past, I think we may have been more, I'm not sure if amenable or cordial is the right term, perhaps neither of them are, but our Governor General for many years was Haitian Canadian and would have been acutely aware of the situation in Haiti, and she's no longer in office. So I'm wondering if that may have also played a role within the decisions that were made.
I don't know. I don't know.
I do apologize if I have been on camera. I do have COVID right now. It's not a very pleasant situation.
Well, okay. Come on now. Let's have somebody who hasn't spoken for a while. Peter Brogdon, let's go back to you. You've got a. Oh, no. Andre wants his hand up. All right. Yeah, Andre.
Hello. With regards to an emergency situation, the violence around the world is increasing. The war has hardened people's hearts. It's terrible. We're in an emergency situation because of the nuclear dangers and the climate crisis. So I say it's all about leadership right now, to bring the climate and the peace movement together. There's two people that I think can bring their individual movements all together to join together. And one is from Canada, Naomi Klein. She's the foremost authority on the climate movement in the North America. And she's listened to. If she asked the people in the climate movement to do anything, they would probably join. And on the other side, in the peace movement, Beatrice Finn from Sweden. She's the most powerful woman in the whole world, I think, because of ICANN. If she asked the people to do anything, they would do it. Those two, when I go to the Secretary General, I'm asking him to bring those women together. I can't do it. They don't listen to me, which I don't expect them to. But the concept that I'm proposing, I'm hoping they'll listen to, because it's all designed around unity. That's what Richard was saying. And all the leaders around the world are saying we need a mass movement. We need to unite under one umbrella. It's right there.
All right.
So thank
you.
you. I have to leave in about 10 minutes, but thank you so much, everybody.
All right. Charles.
A couple of things. Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, you mentioned you mentioned Earth Day and the connection between environment and peace. I participated in the first Earth Day back in my teens in the 60s, and we did some stuff with the first actions of Greenpeace back in the early 70s. Among other things, we transmitted from what was the name of the boat that went up to Amchitka? We transmitted all that. They made a transmission every day and they transmitted it to us, and we put it into the alternative radio network at the States. So that brings back a lot of memories.
The Rainbow Warrior? Are you talking about that?
Yeah, the Rainbow Warrior.
Oh.
Yeah, on top of our house in Portland, one of the Quakers had something like a 10-meter aerial, and we were getting broadcasts from them every day and putting it into the alternative radio network in Portland, Oregon, and they were sending it all over the States. And I was driving up from Portland to Vancouver virtually every weekend at a certain point. So this really takes me back.
Well, we still have some opportunity. We don't have a radio network, but we have tosavetheworld.ca, which is a place where there are public comments on all types of our global issues, war and peace, global warming, famine, pandemics, etc. So please, I really wish it got more use. Go there and post something every time you have a thought. Post it on the right comment column, and then if you see something somebody else has posted, post your reply or your response to them, because we really could do much more if we would use the same website for people working in all of these different areas. That was my original idea. Why I created the website in the first place was the idea that we need a common place, not just to unite those two particular issues, war and peace and and global warming, but all of the others, the four other global issues that threaten us, and yet it's not used enough. So make better use of it, please.
The other point I wanted to make is that I think we're in a very, very dangerous situation in terms of the trauma and the transmission of trauma for the world as a whole. I think that, I know I've said this before, but I think that if we don't do this, we're certainly seeing this in the Balkans, that this will explode. I don't see there's any way around it. I think we're going to see it. I'd be interested to hear Alexei's comments on this too. That if we don't do this, I think some of it, the stuff in Ukraine comes from the Second World War. And we certainly see that here in Croatia and Serbia and Bosnia. That the issues, every time I talk to somebody here about any of this stuff, I get a history lesson, and that dates back to the Second World War. And so I think that if we don't deal with this, we're really going to be in trouble. The other point is that I believe patriotism to be a mental illness. Complete mental illness. Okay. No, and I'm not kidding about that. I think that and I think it seriously needs treatment, and psychiatrists aren't talking about it. And this is really a problem. I think Putin has it, but I think also Zelensky has it. And I mean, and certainly a lot of the stuff in Ukraine, my God, Ukraine during the Second World War, I shudder to think what happened there. We had, on Friday, we had World Holocaust Day, the Victims of Holocaust Day. And those issues are still playing a role. And those transmission issues are completely there in all of Europe, in Greece as well. Mm-hmm. And what are we doing with the migrant issue? My Lord. Croatia was just brought before the International Court of Human Rights on the pushback issue. Greece is also having its issues in that regard. Look at Afghanistan. How many places are there in the world where this is going on? I mean, if you look at Africa, it's the whole continent. And it scares the hell out of me, quite frankly.
Thank you. I think I've seen a lot of heads nodding when you talk about patriotism as a mental illness. I had never called it that, but I think a lot of us agree with you. Yeah. Alan Haber, you have your hand up. So
bye-bye. Thank you. Peace.
Again. And
are you saying goodbye?
Yeah, I have to go.
Andre, okay. Thank you.
Take care. Feel better.
Goodbye, Andre. I'll be in touch. I like what you're doing.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Alan.
So whenever Charles speaks, I'm very moved. You are right on the cut edge of this war system. And I just wanted to underscore, when I talk about a quick way of describing the peace system as full spectrum cooperation, caring, sharing, helping, and healing. Healing is the trauma that everyone who has been in this war system is injured by it. And unless we see the transition to what is new, dealing with that injury, some places very much present and in your face, like child soldiers and so on. Other places less obvious, but still there. So I just wanted to underscore that, and I appreciate very much what Charles David Halber is doing on in the agony of the experience. The experience is much wider. When I spoke to family in Israel, the grandmother said, well, you can't trust the Arabs. And her granddaughter said, who's a psychologist, said, Mother, you have to realize that our whole society is in a trauma from the wars. We have to see a different way of relating to the other. We're all injured. And so right in the family, there's this discussion of how we are injured and how we have to see a different way of looking at the others. The UN decade for rapprochement is just over last year, where the issue was how to see rapprochement between cultures, between injuries. And so there's a lot of outcome from that from UNESCO. And we're now just about to end the decade for the culture of people of African descent, where the consequences of racism are traumatic. We just saw it acted out in Memphis. Whatever drove those people, those black cops, to brutalize. That's not just them. That's a whole history that's played out in, 5, in some way, innocent receptors of social pathology. So what Charles is doing, I really appreciate, and I think we should all see that as part of the struggle we are in, to recognize the injuries we are dealing with in ourselves and in the people we are seeking to relate with.
By the way, are you guys aware that Canada has one of the foremost foundations on child soldiers, the Dallaire Foundation, the General Dallaire Foundation in Halifax?
Right.
They are one of the few groups working with former child soldiers and with current child soldiers. And that is a real problem in many, many places. People are scared of these people, of these kids, because they have been taught, as I said before, to kill. And so people are afraid to engage with them. This is what I've been hearing.
I need to try again. Adam, remind me. Let's try to get to Romeo Dallaire again. Every time I've tried to interview him, he's turned me down. But I think, let's try again. Because it is so important. His work with child soldiers is unique, I think. I don't know anybody in the world who's doing that. And I don't know really what he's doing, but we certainly have people in common. And maybe I can get one of my friends to intervene with him and persuade him to let me talk to him.
Meta, he has an executive director called Shelley Whitman.
All right.
In Halifax.
We'll
you
try
might
again.
try to get through her.
Okay.
Who's the guy? Oh, in California, I think, who has worked for years and years and years on this issue.
I don't know of anybody in California who's done that.
Oh, hang on, I'll try and
And
find
child
it.
soldiers? No, don't
Yeah.
know. You know what group he's with or organization?
He's with one of the universities, but let me try and find it.
Okay, if you'll post it if you do find it.
I'll put it on the chat.
Or because the chat will be put into the public comments column as soon as I get it, the show put up. So you can, we'll always have the chat available there, but you can add it as a separate entry in the public comments column. Anyway, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it certainly is a very important thing to talk about child soldiers. Now I would like, if nobody else has anything urgent, I want to go back to this thing that's on my mind with Alexei, because I've kind of been, I don't know, I've wanted Alexei to be engaged with this, but I can see that you've got to find a way to set up your own livelihood in Warsaw and get secure before I call on you so much on this. But my notion is this, that these people like yourself,
Mhm.
and there could even be a million of you, guys who left Russia
Mhm.
just at the time of mobilization in order to avoid being sent to kill.
Mhm.
That you guys should have, you're the most promising bunch of people to have an impact on the country because you oppose the war. And at least those of you who do oppose the war are the ones that we want to deal with. And I agree. I don't know how to sort the good ones from the bad ones, because there's every incentive for the bad ones to lie in order to get on the list of the good ones. So it's not an easy thing to do. But, you know, the notion that you do still have and will continue to have ongoing contacts with people in Russia, even those of you who will never go back, you're going to still have family and friends there, and you're in touch with them. And people in Russia are not in a position to take a position against the government publicly, but living outside the country, you are. So you now are in a position to think and talk about how to fix the country. And nobody in that country is. I mean, I've talked to some people that I like a whole lot who are still staying in the country, and they are holding their tongue. Some, you know, they can't say much. Even people who are extremely vocal normally are not speaking up. So you are the only people who can make good suggestions. So you need to have a conversation. You need to have it in Russian, and you need to have it something like this global town hall, only it ought to be structured a little bit so that 1 week you'll be talking about, I don't know, the judicial system. The next week you'll be talking about who's going to regulate the economy. And the next week you'll talk about, you know, what kind of electoral system you believe in or whatever. You could talk about the kinds of structural changes you need to make in the system so that when you get back into an opportunity to go home, if you ever want to go home, you at least have worked out some stuff. And so I want to facilitate that. I want to have a show once, maybe twice a month, hosted by somebody like you, speaking in Russian with all of the Russian emigres who want to talk about solving these problems. And you know, we can publicize it and invite people everywhere in the world. So people have gone to Thailand, and I talked to somebody who's gone to Sri Lanka. They can't find any way to get a visa to the places that they want to go, so they wind up going strange places that they don't feel they belong. But at any rate,
my next door neighbor.
You have one in Ann Arbor, is that it?
Yeah, 2 houses down.
Well, take his name down and email address, because my notion is somebody should be collecting the names and email addresses of people who fit that category. And these are not people who are immediately concerned about how to change the Constitution of Russia, because they've got to get on their feet financially and find, you know, get their kids in school and whatever needs to be done. That's a totally, you know, consuming process for a while. But after they do, and starting right now, because some people are ready, we could start running a talk show in Russian. And it needs to be in Russian, so I can't be involved. I don't know Russian. But you and some of your friends could. I know that Andrei Kamenchikov would be a good person. And there are probably others that you would recommend as, say, ringleaders of this thing. And let's record it and put it on our website and encourage other people to join in. And I think that, you know, this is not just for the fun of people, the pleasure of people wanting to contact each other for sentimental reasons. It's really needed as a way of planning ahead to fix the flaws that have led to this situation. Where, I mean, you've got a government where it's set up so that one human being can start a war and nobody can stop him. Nobody can
Yeah.
stop him. Now, something's got to be done to fix that. And it shouldn't be hard for people to understand that this is an issue that they've got to deal with. Now, tell me, am I wrong?
You're absolutely right, because one of the reasons why this hasn't taken place so far is because we're atomized. We're like it has been already mentioned that we live in different silos, all of us. A lot has been done to make us that way, make us behave that way over the past 25 years. If you look back at the history of Putinism, you will notice that a whole generation has been brought up in a way to disbelieve any grassroots initiatives, any disbelieve any change that could come out of discussion, and that's another important reason. Not only just some immediate problems like survival, like getting some job here and there. It's also disbelief, and then there is fear, because many people understand that something can happen in their home country. I know a couple of people, and I could include myself, that some circumstances could happen back home. May I call it that way still, because my mom is back in Russia, and if she needs immediate help, I might have to just go back against all odds. And many people are scared to talk because they're they haven't yet severed all the ties with Russia yet, and they're unable to do so because they have relatives, they have the family there. And although they are outside the country, immediately out of danger, immune to danger, it might happen that they might either their hostages, their families as hostages, they can be they can incur some damage, or they themselves might have to get back to go back to the country. That's very sad.
Yeah,
that's very sad.
Well, it certainly is, but but in a way, it's. I don't think you're afraid to talk, because you come on this global town hall all the time, and you said things that clearly, you'd get in trouble for saying at home, or you might get in trouble. How many people actually get in trouble? They said right at the beginning that if you do something like use the word war instead of special military operation, you can get 15 years in jail. Okay. Has anybody actually been sent to jail for 15 years or any length of time for doing that? How many people do you know of who've actually experienced real repression as opposed to the threat of repression?
Well, it's being done very randomly. So Putin's approach is unlike Stalin's approach of mass repressions. Putin's approach is that of random repression. So, okay, let's take 1 in 10,000 persons, and let's be really hard on them. Let's not let's not touch everyone in the 10,000s, but let's make one. Let's take one and make his life as poor as possible, so everyone can feel that that's a lottery. Even though the chance is slim, I can be the next one after him. And it's very random. There is a feeling of chaos. The feeling is that the system is ungovernable, unmanageable, and that it's living a life of its own. The system of repression. So you never know what can happen. Yeah, really. But I think the chance is slim.
How afraid are most of the people you're in touch with in Russia? How careful and cautious are they on the whole?
Mostly they're cautious enough to use the word special military operations even in public in private messages.
Well, I watch
Whereas I'm using war.
Right.
I'm
I
using
watch
war
a
myself.
video several times a week in which a guy goes around with a camera on the street and stops people and says, "What do you think of the government, or what do you approve of this war?" And 2/3 or so of them will give a straight answer, which is either yes or no. I mean, they do differ, and maybe a third of them will say, "I don't want to talk about it." And we'll walk on. So I don't know whether that's a representative sample, but at any rate, it means that not everybody is scared to speak up in a way that they know they're being filmed, and yet they do it, they say it, and they don't seem those people don't seem to be afraid.
Meta, I must go, but I want to remind people of the quote from Einstein, and this is something that applies here as well, namely that unthinking obedience to authority is the greatest enemy of truth. And the point is that people are very much afraid. There's a singer here called Thompson, and named for the Tommy gun. And he's a fascist. They wear black shirts to his concert. They give the Nazi salute here. And when I approached the Jewish community about protesting his presence, they were extremely afraid of doing this.
Extremely what?
So fear,
afraid.
Extremely afraid. They were, there is this whole fear element, which dates back from any time of dictatorship, even from Tito. So Marko Perkovic is the guy's name in reality. But I must go because I have to have my group in Haiti now. But bear in mind that the element of fear that has been developed in all of these countries is huge. And people are, even in the States, how many people go against the draft? How many people go against military, what they laughingly call service?
Well,
okay.
My answer on that is, certainly nobody would ever want to quarrel with Einstein, but I'm not sure that his formulation is adequate, because it's not just the obedience to authority; it's also conformity to a social group. I mean,
exactly.
The majority of, I think, our stupidities, our bad behavior and bad thinking come from group dynamics, where we're in a group of people that we like and we want them to approve of us. We don't want to make waves. We don't want to offend anybody or be thought of as odd. And so everybody conforms to everybody else. And there's this group dynamic that's even if there's no authority telling you what to do, people will say stupid things that will, and run their lives in a really bad way because of this groupthink. And that bothers me. It's not just bad people who do it. It's organizations that I belong to that are very important to me, that I've seen the same kind of, willful blindness and ignorance and distorted thinking, because people want to be conforming to what the rest of the group thinks.
Agreed.
Yeah.
You forgive me. I must go because I have the group.
Okay.
But we'll be in touch. And
all right, bless you, my friend. Thank you for your work. Anybody else want to say a parting word before we split for the month? Yes, Peter Brogdon. Yes,
I certainly found it intense listening, hearing you talk about all of these things. And I have been out of it a little bit for one or two other reasons. And I'm very glad to be able to think again and ask the questions of myself, at any rate, even if I can't get round to asking the question on the screen. So I am very appreciative of what I've been able to hear in the last 2 hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. It's wonderful. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure. I guess these things are not entirely pleasurable, but it's good for us, good for the soul, and I think we all are making contributions in our
They're
own way.
healing.
It's healing, yeah. There's a big
It's healing. Thank you.
big heart on Alexei's screen, so thank you all. Mwah. See you in a month. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.